Mike Pachelli here. Thanks for tuning in. I certainly do appreciate it. I'll be talking about the Beatles recording of When I Get Home that they did on June 2nd, 1964. Now, the song was written in May of 64 entirely by John Lennon for the Beatles' third studio album, A Hard Day's Night. The song was influenced by Motown and rhythm and blues, and it has some unusual chord progressions, the kind that John Lennon liked. The refrain starts in a major key of A and ends up in minor key A minor. And the bridge is 10 measures long, but in a different key of C. About the song, John has said, "I'd rather write a song with chords all over the place. That's me again, another Wilson Pickett Motown sound, a four in the bar cowbell song." But of course, there's no cowbell on the song. But in the lyrics, John seems to want to, escape the busy Beatles schedule of touring, filming, and recording A Hard Day's Night, and, just get back home to the simple life with his wife, Cynthia. About the song, Paul has said, "It may have been based in real experiences with Cynthia or whatever, but it never occurred to us until later to put that slant on it all." So on June 2nd, 1964, they're at EMI Studio 2, and it's the last day for recording of the Hard Day's Night album. They get the song finished in its entirety in 3 hours from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. with John and George on electric guitar, Paul on bass, Ringo on drums, and John singing live during the rhythm section. They do 11 takes, and then it's time for overdubs. The overdubs are John Lennon double-tracking some of the lead vocal, Paul and George doing background vocals, and Paul playing some piano. Now, fun facts to know and tell. Ringo forgets to play the fill on the last refrain, but that may be because he was in a lot of pain during the session, because the very next day he collapses from tonsillitis at a photo shoot for the Saturday Evening Post, and then he's immediately hospitalized. They do mono mixes of the song on June 4th, but those mixes were never used. They went back to mix on June 22nd, and those are the mixes that we hear, stereo and mono. They never played it live or on the BBC radio, and the day they recorded the song was the only day they actually ever touched it. It was released on an album called Something New in the US on July 20th, 1964, and on the Hard Day's Night album in the UK on the 10th of July, 1964. So that's the backstory. Let's get started. The main guitar you hear on When I Get Home is played by George Harrison. He's playing his Country Gentleman through a Vox AC30, so I have my Gretsch going through my 1964 AC30. Now, he starts on the and of four. The beginning of the song is 1, 2, 3, and 4, and. So you'll need these chords to play the initial refrain. You'll need an A7. You'll need a D7. A G7, and an A minor. So he starts 1, 2, da da da. Now, in those little last measure of the refrain, kind of riffs, licks, whatever you want to call them, John and George play close to the same thing, but they both do it pretty sloppy. But it sounds like they're trying to go something like that, So when you're playing it, just play it loose and sloppy and kind of play along with Ringo. Then we get to the verse. On the verses, you'll need a few new chords. You'll need a C7. And an F7, and you'll also use the G7 and the A7. Now, George plays on 2 and 3 and. He doesn't play on 1 and 4. So on a verse, it's like 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. One. And then you're to the second refrain and second verse, which is exactly the same. So let me play you the intro and a verse with Ringo here. You'll see how it fits together. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, second refrain is exactly the same. Thanks, Ringo. As the first and the second chorus. Now, at the end of this, I should say, at the end of the second verse, he stays on G7. He goes like that, a little different. And again, charts and tabs at MikePachelli.com if you want to know exactly what George played. So that there's nothing really different on that refrain, or going into, but going into the bridge, it changes a little bit. So from the second refrain, I'll play it for you. It goes like this. Let's see, 3, 4. Just straight strumming like that on that A minor. So now the bridge chord is a straight C to an A minor. You'll need an F, and you'll use the G7 again. A minor. So here's the bridge. Very slowly, I'll play it slowly for you. Like. Now, interesting on the F, he plays a full F bar chord, but you play the low parts, the low strings, as you say, and then. So, low strings, 2 and 3 and 4 and kind of the same figure throughout. So do an A minor. Let me do the bridge in time for you. George's bridge. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, thanks, Ringo. And then on verse 3, it changes a little bit, where George will play, and John does this too. You'll see when I show you John's part. They kind of play like on now George is playing on beat 1, but he plays like eighth notes. He goes like to. On this verse he just play this measure he just plays. Doesn't play 3, 4. Then again. Be the last refrain. Let me do that in time for you. Verse 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then he's going into the end refrain. The only difference on the last refrain 4, is the seventh measure. He plays eighth notes, but he picks them all down. So that last refrain would be like this. Let's see. And they both play first position, cornball C's at the end. So again, that last refrain, just remember on measure 7. I should do that slowly for you. So the last refrain, let's see, 3, 4. And those are all the parts you need to play like George Harrison on When I Get Home. John Lennon is playing his little tiny Rickenbacker on When I Get Home, so I've got mine plugged into my AC-30 still. And for the most part, he plays pretty much what George played. This is with a few exceptions. When he first starts off, John starts muting his guitar on 3. So when they sing whoa, whoa, he's also going. So it's 1, 2, and then he plays a first position A. So to get through the refrain of John's part, you'll need an A like this. You'll need a D7, a G7, and an A minor. So again, it's like 1, 2. John strums through that G7, and that's how you can differentiate which guitar is what. And that's how I do it. I mean, once you hear on the record and you go, oh, that's John's part, just hone into that tone, and you'll be able to follow along what John is playing. And that's how I do it. So he strums through on beat 1 of the G7, and he also strums through on the A minor. And then that same kind of little wild, reckless abandon riff that they do. On the bridge now, or I say on the verses, excuse me, he plays something different. Where George isn't playing on beat 1, you could hear John playing eighth notes. John goes, so same chords, C7 to F7, and C7, F7, C7, that's it, and he'll get to a regular A for the verse. So on the verse, he plays those eighth notes. He goes, and then he's playing 4 and 1 and of the C of the F7 to the C of the C. So let me do that really slow. So like this. And then on the last measure of the first verse, John does a little reckless abandon G7. He plays. So I should do that in tempo for you. You'll get a better idea. 1, 2. And then you're to the second refrain. The second refrain and the second verse is exactly the same. Excuse me, at the end of the second verse, he stays on G7 into the third refrain, which is exactly the same as the other ones. You know, third refrain is. Now on the bridge, John is doing more straight strumming, pretty much just straight 8 notes. So like 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and with a C to an A minor, C to A minor, then a regular F, G7, F, G7 to A minor. So that bridge in time will sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. And on that time, on that G, where George plays a G7, John plays a straight G. Okay, last verse, just kind of, again, more strumming. John goes like this. into the final refrain. Last refrain. On this A, he doesn't play an A7, he plays a straight A, straight bar A. So, oops. And he ends on a first position C chord, just like George. So let me play the last refrain out. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, ba, ba, doo. Thank you, Ringo. Charts and tabs at MikePachelli.com, which will show you exactly what John played, and you can play it too. So I put it all together in a sound alike so you can see how both guitar parts fit together. So have a look at this. Whoa, whoa. Well, I hope you enjoyed that, and now you see how all the parts fit together. As usual, I suggest you learn both parts, play along with my sound alike, and you'll get it just like the Beatles. And if you'd like to drop me a line, do so at MikePachelli.com, and that's where the charts and tabs for all my video lessons are available for you to download. And I do appreciate your consideration in supporting me that way. So have fun playing this great old song, because that's what playing the guitar should be all about. And I'm Mike Pachelli. Thanks for hanging out with me.